presented by Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 when you use the promo code. Welcome to Light Years, a joyous Light Years, a post big win against the OKC Thunder a week before the trade deadline. Light Years, got Jimmy Butler at home, got Zach LaVine at home, no need to make a move. Got Vooch at home, Light Years. Tommy, how you doing?
After that game, fantastic, man. You know, I texted our guy Ryan Harabi before the game. He told me he was putting a little wager on the Thunder tonight, -9.5. And I said, Ryan, I got a strangely good feeling about this game tonight. I didn't know why, but I just had a feeling they were going to get a win.
Give Ryan the hotline number. I've been following his bets, and there's no way he's not deep in the pocket right now. But that's why you guys should use. That's why you guys should use the promo code, because they'll give you some free money, so you're not that deep in. You know
exactly. So. No, but I for whatever reason, it was just one of those things where it's like, is OKC really going to be that up for this team tonight? And obviously, the game starts how it starts, down double digits for most of the first half, make a nice little run to end the first half, and then it was just a game from there on out. I thought the effort level was higher than normal tonight. And you get that when you're playing the best team in the West. You know what I mean? Like OKC is the best team in the West.
You also get that when you get 3 media leaks in the last 24 hours about how all your asses are on the trade block. So
yeah, absolutely. No, that was a big time trade deadline game, but that was a fun one, man. It was just nice. But that's the best win in 2 months, maybe the best win since the Boston game. Seriously.
Best win since the hot start, for sure. Like someone in the chat already mentioned that, and I'm struggling to think of a game. Like obviously they started 12-3, everything looked great. They beat OKC, they beat Boston, they beat all these good teams, and then it's not like they haven't won games since then, although they really haven't. But like it just, I haven't felt a game like this since early November?
Yeah,
mid-November. Call it mid-November.
Let's say Dallas.
Veterans Day. Yeah,
the Dallas game at home, the Clay return. That was really the last win that felt like this. So we're talking 2.5 months at this point. So it just, my analysis right now is it feels good to get a good win. That's all I got at the moment.
I have a weird relationship with this OKC team. I don't know about you. Like, I admire a lot of qualities about that organization, about this team. Like, they have a lot of players I'd like. They have a lot of players I'd like on the team. They tend to do things the right way. They've built a strong not just a strong team, but strong culture. And yet at the same time, like, I kind of fucking loathe them. You know what I'm saying? Like, stylistically, like, I think Shea's probably the front runner for MVP, rightfully so. He's been that good. You know, he deserves to be on the short list. And at the same time, you're like, come on, man, that's not foul. Stop. You know, they remind me so much of the James Harden Rockets from that perspective, where it's like, I respect what you guys have built. Very good team. A lot of like qualities that sometimes you wish your own team had in terms of team building and just kind of like generally being smart and ahead of the curve. And at the same time, you're also like, I'm really grateful my team's not like that.
Yeah, it's just they play, obviously, outside of SGA, they play a pretty high variance style. Like, you're relying on a lot of role players to make a lot of threes. And it can be, it's really a do or die style of basketball. And I mean, obviously SGA was outstanding tonight, like incredible, 52 points. He was impossible for anybody to stop. But at the same time, the game kind of flipped on its head when beginning of the third quarter, they stopped calling some of those like lean in, baiting, trying to get the foul on every single shot type of fouls. And all of a sudden it went from, I think it was 8 or 10 at half. And now all of a sudden it's a 1-point game because he tried that a couple of times to start the second. They didn't give him the call. And now it's run out the other way. And obviously he's tremendous. I'm not really trying to take anything away from his game, but at the same time, he is very reliant on those type of plays. And I think not only from the standpoint of just getting free throws, but from the way that other teams defend him, right? Because they know they can't get too close to him because it's a foul. And that tends to flip a little bit in the playoffs. And he was pretty good in last year's playoffs, but he wasn't quite as good as the regular season. So I'm very interested to see what their entire team looks like, obviously, because they're the front runner to come out of the West right now. But how does this look come playoff time?
Seed. Like, no one's catching them for the top record.
No.
Highly unlikely.
And so they're going to have home court advantage. Oh, we know the Thunder have a massive home court advantage. We have experienced that as Warriors fan in 2016. Like, that is a really tough place to play in the playoffs. But at the same time, I mean, do you really? He's not going to get a lot of those calls come playoffs, and then that changes the kind of the entire dynamic of what they do offensively, because they are incredibly reliant on him to create shots. Him and Jay.
And Jalen Williams is kind of like I don't want to call him a poor man Shea, but it's like it's the same thing. If it's not Shea, he's trying to kind of use his dribble. Obviously, he's going to go left, get to the mid range, not as reliant on grifting, but he's still kind of trying to get to the same spots Shea gets to. And tonight was another example. 26 shots. What of those 26? How many of them were in the 8 to 12 foot range? 20.
A lot of them.
The vast majority. Like, he had that one big dunk that was nice, and a couple other things. But it's like same type of trying to live there. And to your point, the rest of their basically they let those two guys live there, and they're like, everyone else, you better fucking hit the open threes they kick to you. That's it.
And that's always kind of been Kerr's strategy, especially when overall, he'll live with role players making threes. And that's, I think, where we've seen more frustration come throughout the fan base is, he's kind of employing the same defensive style that he was employing in 2015 when the league is much, much different. But at the same time, in a smaller sample size of a playoff series, you kind of play the math with, a Lou Dort or a Kenrich Williams and Isaiah Joe taking open threes over SGA or whoever else killing you, and that's kind of the philosophy behind it. So that can be frustrating over 82 games, but at the same time, I still kind of like my chances in a playoff series in that environment, making role players beat me with really big pressure shots.
Particularly like the role players OKC has are defensive minded, defense first. Like, they're good players. You watch like a Caruso, a Lou Dort, even a Kassan Wallace. Like, these guys are like, man, I wish the Warriors had a guy like that, because they're just glue guys, make winning plays. It's going to stack up over the regular season. But at the same time, if you play the style OKC does, they're highly reliant on those guys hitting a bunch of open threes. And that's not really who any of them are. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it is a little tricky on their behalf in general.
To take the Houston analogy a little bit further, like, we saw the over 27 happen. And because a lot of those threes were the guys that the Warriors wanted. Yeah, the Warriors, Trevor Ariza, whoever else was out there for the Rockets, or it was very contested looks for Harden. But, I mean, the reason why Boston employs a very similar strategy. They take a ton of threes. But the difference is
better shooters.
Yeah, exactly. The guys taking those threes are Derek White or Drew Holiday or Peyton Pritchard or Porzingis. Like, there is a talent gap there in terms of the others for a Boston and the others for an OKC. And I think you're going to see that show up a little bit in the playoffs. Like, I was talking about it with somebody tonight over text, who I would kind of have coming out of the West. And, you got to say OKC is the favorite right now. But at the same time, I would maybe still trust Denver in a playoff series against them, because Denver still has the best player in that series, in my opinion. And their role players are just a little bit more versatile. If their role players aren't entirely reliant on threes. And I think that matters a little bit more in the playoffs. I really do.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think, actually, I don't know that I have a counter to that in general. The West feels wide open in general.
Wide open.
We'll see. We'll see where the whole thing lands, but what a fun game. And let's get to the Warrior players a little bit. Like, sorry, I was just fascinated by OKC, and we'll get to it, but like, what a game by Wiggins tonight.
Oh my God.
And not just Wiggins, GP2. I feel like 2022 it was the 2022 version of both of them.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, right?
Right down to the last possession with the GP2 dunk.
Right? Yeah. 9 rebounds. In some ways, it's a good matchup for him, because OKC plays a bunch of guards who kind of profile like him physically. I was joking off the top, but I'm also serious about it. It's like every player who would be in a prospective trade had a little more pep in their step tonight. Like Wiggins, I don't think the Warriors want to trade him, but there's just the proverbial, if you want to acquire a guy in a big salary, his name, it's just hard to match without considering him. Obviously, GP2 is an expiring contract. Looney's an expiring contract. Most points he scored, I don't know, since when, Just going down the line, it was like all the guys that we kind of like throw in the trade machine, like fuck it, let's get rid of them. Let's figure it out. They all kind of played up to their peak ability tonight, and they look really good.
I mean, forget the 18 points for Loon. When was the last time he had 4 blocks in a game? 4 or 5 years. I mean, they were all outstanding. All those guys you name, Wiggs, GP2, and Loon. But I mean, I think I just want to single out Wiggs for a minute here. He's been, I mean, tremendous as the season has been kind of sliding away. He's had more than 20 points in 8 out of 10 games now, I want to say. And just scoring wise, he's kind of back to a point that he really hasn't gone to since I'd say like 2020, 21, that season right before they win the title. They were asking him to score a lot more just because the way that roster was built. You obviously didn't have Clay the entire year. Poole wasn't Poole yet. So he had a lot more of a scoring load. And I want to say the last 20, 30 games of that season, obviously Steph went nuclear. He was averaging like 38 a game over the final part of that season. But Wiggins was like 21 or 22 a game. And he's reached back to that a little bit because they've needed him to, especially with Kuminga out. And he's just been, look, I mean, we're going to talk trades eventually, but he's been outstanding. And with the way he's playing, I really do have a harder and harder time moving him, especially because it is going to hurt your defense. And he can't expend as much energy on defense right now because of what they're asking of him offensively. But if you get a guy like LaVine, you would love to have Wiggins on the wing next to him.
Yeah. I mean, he is. The one thing I will say is he's shooting the fuck out of the ball. Like in general, his scoring is highly jump shot reliant, but that's cool if it goes in. It's cool if it goes in, like he's finishing pretty much at a career low at the rim this year and off the bounce, but he's probably having a career high shooting it off the catch. And he really is like, he won't get the credit from national people because he has a bad reputation for a variety of reasons, many of which are self-inflicted. Let's be honest. But he probably is the best 3-and-D player in the league. Like, he might not be the best game to game, but he's the most talented 3-and-D player in the league. Like, he's the best version of Wiggins is better than the best version of OG or Mikal Bridges. It's just the game to game version of those guys has been more consistent over the last 5 years. And so they have a better reputation than he does. But like neither of those guys have done what he did in the 2022 playoffs. And tonight's another good example. Like 5 for 8 from 3. He had what I think was the game ceiling 3.
Yes.
Down the stretch. That was a big shot. That was not an easy shot. More important than it being a big shot. That was like, no one would have been like, how do you miss that, Wiggins, if he missed it? He was fouled during it, It was a crazy shot, but it basically sealed the game. Yeah, man. It's hard to find. You can find guys who can shoot it like him. You can find guys who can defend close to like him. Like Derek Jones on the Clippers comes to mind as like a budget defender who can do a lot of the things he does. It's hard to find one guy who can do both those things at the same time, which is why everyone in the league's always like looking for those type of guys. And, recently he's just giving everyone a reminder. Like, you may want to get a second option, but like it's not as simple as getting rid of him. Like you get rid of him for a second option who doesn't defend, you might eventually build a better team. It's not a given you're going to be better making that trade.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it before. It's like just swapping deck chairs on the Titanic at that point, right? But I mean, how many guys who have the ability to defend at his level? Like I said, he's not necessarily doing it right now, and there are reasons for that. How many of those guys can hit movement threes? He hit a couple of them tonight, like coming off pin downs, flying to a corner, and like burying it. He's shooting the ball outstanding.
Off a DHO, like those are not easy shots.
No, they're not. They're not. And I think, part of that is just, I think
that's not what a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith's like, oh, he's a 3-and-D guy. It's like he can hit a shot for sure. He's not hitting that shot.
Yep.
He's hitting a kick out, my feet are set, and you've helped off of me shot. Not the defense knows I want to take the shot and I'm rising up to take a type of shot.
And really, to bring it back to OKC in a way, that's what OKC doesn't have from their 3-and-D guys, right? It's like it has to be wide open, feet set, or it's probably not going in unless it's Isaiah Joe. but Isaiah Joe can't defend like Wiggins. And that's why Wiggins is so valuable. As frustrating as he can be at times and has been over the past couple years. When he plays like this, it makes it very hard to trade him. And yeah, obviously the fact that rumors are swirling, it's probably motivating him a little bit, but he's been very good this year overall. When he's been on the floor, he's been obviously one of their 3 best players. So I just wanted to, we've talked about a lot of different stuff over the past couple weeks, and a lot of it hasn't been game focused, but I just wanted to shout out Wiggs because he has been so good recently, and I think he deserves the shout out. But let's
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
on the OKC point, the only thing I will point out is like they're very reliant on Chet for kind of bailout offense and shot making, and that's kind of rough for a guy coming back from a hip injury, and who knows what it'll look like physically. But that's a different discussion. Let's talk about our lead sponsor here.
Yeah, let's do it, huh? All right. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes will only need to throw for 1 yard to win. 1 yard, guys. It's like the thing we did with Jaden Daniels last week. It's the easiest bet of all time. So you just put that with whatever else you're looking at. Maybe take the Saquon more than on rushing yards, Jalen Hurts plus a half TD, and there you go. So if you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash. Prize Picks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts, like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So download the app today and use code LIGHTYEARS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly when you just play your first $5 lineup. You don't even have to win yet. Prize Picks, run your game.
Today was a good day for General Warriors World for a variety of reasons. One of the less discussed ones is Steph Curry wins the USA Basketball 5-on-5 Male Athlete of the Year. I'm not going to make the chat watch it, but just anytime I see a callback to the Olympics, I get and it really was only 6 months ago. But that was some of the best basketball I've ever watched. Just in terms of being a fan, the moments, that Serbia game, the end of the France game, do you not anytime you see a highlight of it come across your timeline or whatever, just you get that little feeling, you're like, I got to watch this right now.
You have to watch it. I'll stop whatever I'm doing to watch anything that comes on from the Olympics. And we talked about the docuseries that's coming out in a couple weeks on Netflix. And like we said, I'm in general, kind of tired of sports documentaries. I think they're being overdone and overwrought, but I am watching every second of this because it really was that incredible. But I mean, it's another just notch on the belt for Steph in what has obviously been, I think, a basketball career that better than anybody could ever have imagined, even himself. So it's cool. It just really is cool to see him get another honor like this.
2 thoughts on it. One, thank you, USA Basketball, for acknowledging he was the best player and not the guy the Olympics awarded it to because Nike was a chief sponsor of the Olympics. Anyone's lasting memory of the 2024 basketball tournament in the Olympics will be Steph Curry. That was a stacked team. LeBron was fucking phenomenal in his role the entire tournament. KD was phenomenal and they were all great. Shocker, great players play great, right? But what you're gonna remember is when the chips were down, 30 was the guy who got the ball in his hands and made all the key plays, made all the big shots. I think it says something about how kind of generationally they're viewed. LeBron was Mr. Do Everything, but who did he want the ball? Whose hands did he want the ball in at the end? It was that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we said, anytime it comes across the timeline, I have to watch it. Mm-hmm. I'm not even on TikTok like that. I'm too old for that. But I've seen all the TikTok edits of the Olympics, especially of Steph.
I know.
And it's just
exactly like you are. I'm like, that fuck TikTok. And then I see like an edit of Steph in the Olympics. I'm like, this is pretty cool. Never mind.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it was cool. I think it probably made it easier to award it to Steph in a way because LeBron did get the one at the Olympics. So it was like an obvious choice to give that to Steph because he deserved to be recognized. I mean, I think he had 36 against Serbia in the semis and then 24 against France in the finals. But that 24 was 12 of it was in the last 4 minutes of the game where he made 4 of the craziest shots you'll ever see. Right. So yeah. And it was just a reminder to the world that, yeah, he's still that guy. And then he gave us another little reminder to end that game tonight.
And that's the other part of it, which I wanted to tie to is like, over the summer, he stamped, anyone who's like, I'm getting older. He put the performance you wanted to see in the biggest moment to remind everyone, like, I'm still that dude. And this season's been rough. Tonight was not rough. Tonight was awesome. But the season has been rough, and it's been an overwhelming conversation. And like, quite frankly, the first half you and I were talking about it, how it was like, he looks old, he looks unengaged, that sort of thing. And so I guess my question for you is, where are you at with Steph in the proverbial, is he still that guy? Can you still like win at that level with it? Because like he's always going to be that guy. He can be the most washed guy on earth, and he's still going to shoot the ball with the confidence that like only the top 1% of 1% have. But are you still a believer that what we saw in the Olympics, he can do in the NBA finals, in the semi, like in those like moments that matter?
Well, I think the Olympics are actually instructive, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's dealing with bilateral knee tendonitis or whatever they're terming it as. So that's probably slowing him down a little bit. Doesn't really have the same lift, have the same burst. And maybe some of that's just age. But the way that the Olympics played out, he did do a little bit less ball handling than he normally did. But he had guys that could get downhill and pressure the rim consistently with LeBron or whoever else was handling the ball, right? But what that did is it freed him up to be who he needed to be in the biggest moments. And so to tie it to the Warriors, that tells you that he needs a little bit more help to get there. But I think if you can get him there, he can still be that guy. It's just not going to look as smooth over an 82 game season because that's not realistic for a guy who's 36 and who's 6'3" and isn't all that athletic. He's a small guard. It's different for him.
Fuck out of here. Do my mellow. Fuck out of here. No. No, I mean, it's we'll get to this. He is still that guy. I agree with you. Like in general, he's still that guy. He's also an older guy who requires a little more help in different ways. Like part of the reason they started so hot this season was they defended their asses off.
Yeah.
Things were a little easier that way. I think he needs more than just defense around him. He needs a second shot creator. There's a few things, but still very much bought in. Still very much bought in.
And if we just want to look at the beginning of the season, he had enough to close out Boston in the Garden because they were able to defend for long enough. And he had enough to close out OKC and OKC because they were able to get a big enough lead. Like he can still do those things. It's just not going to be as consistent over the first 36 minutes of the game. Even tonight, he closed out OKC again. Like we know he can do it, but that's why, and we'll get there, but that's why a guy like LaVine would be so cool because it would really take that pressure off of him.
Let's get into those rumors real quick, but before we do,
are we going to do some Via? Is it that time?
I think we should do a little Via.
All right, let's do it. All right, 2025, a new you, a new year, full of new possibilities. Don't let the bad times of 2024 bring you down. This year, reach new heights with Via. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, Via is the Swiss Army knife of wellness, dedicated to harnessing the natural benefits of hemp to create high-quality wellness products. Whether you're looking to improve your sleep, focus, recovery, add a little pep to your step, or just get high, Via has something for you. With products ranging from 0 to 100 milligrams of THC, Via gives you the power to blaze your own trail. I've been struggling to get some sleep this week for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just couldn't sleep at all. So last night I took one of Via's Zen gummies. It has obviously some CBD in there. It has some passion flower, some L-theanine, all kinds of stuff that helps you relax. And I was out like a light within 20 minutes. I swear by those things. They better than like melatonin or anything else I've tried to get some sleep. So if you're struggling with sleeping, go get Via Zen. It's going to knock you out in 20, 30 minutes cold. Via is also well renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies, as we know. So if you're 21 plus, check out our link to Via's website in the description and use the code LIGHTYEARS for 15% off. That's code LIGHTYEARS to receive 15% off. And if you're new to Via, you get a gift free of choice. So all you have to do is when you purchase, just ask them where you heard about them, tell them our show. And that's the best way to support our show, but that's the way you get your free gift from Via. So this year, enhance your everyday with Via.
For sure. Get some Via, guys. I'm going to give you another quick health tip, guys. You've heard me talk about it all season, but our friends at Body Spec, best deal you can get. Guys, get a DEXA scan at Body Spec with the code LIGHTYEAR45, LIGHTYEARS45. You can get a DEXA scan for only $45. What is a DEXA scan? It's a highly accurate method of measuring your body's composition. Body fat percentage, lean muscle mass, visceral fat, the fat around your organs, all that stuff that traditionally was not accessible for average Joe, Tommy, me, Andy. Traditionally that sort of stuff is like what, our guy B Pods goes and gets, what Slow-Mo gets, what the Warriors demand Looney get, that sort of stuff. And you and I, like, we just stand on the scale and we're just like, 208, what? Like that sort of thing, right? With Body Spec, you can get a DEXA scan for $45 instead of $300. Really find out what's going on with your body and then get your fitness journey going. Look, guys, I know how it goes. Like, we're all metric driven. We see something, we're just like, what the hell? 20% body fat. That's not going to work for me. Diet starts tomorrow. So get it. It's easy. And the best part is they got mobile vans. They'll come out to you if you're in San Francisco or the Bay. So bodyspec.com, LIGHTYEARS45. Yeah. To the chat. That's true. Maybe it was Zion. He used the promo code LIGHTYEARS45, got himself a DEXA scan at Body Spec. He would not be in the situation he's in. Just saying.
Get him in touch with Aaron Lau. Get that DEXA scan. Yeah. Maybe to be motivated.
That's right. All right, let's get to it. Dude, we are a week away from the trade deadline.
That came up so fast.
I know, right? Like, I feel like we were doing trade deadline conversation at Thanksgiving when the season turned south. And I was like, I can't do this. It's too early. And next thing you know, we're here and I've forgotten about it in some ways. And, we're probably going to pod daily from now until the trade deadline, or almost daily from here on out. But now, some interesting stuff last day. So, like, everyone, I potted yesterday about the Jimmy Butler rumors, shams, and our guy KOC talking about how the Warriors are interested. Our friends at The Athletic came out today with Warriors trade intel, what we're hearing about Jimmy Butler and Zach LaVine. And I'm just going to pull it up here. There are worries on the Jimmy Butler side about price tag and fit, among other concerns. When you get to LaVine, there's a little more feeling that he would be easier to fit into the Warriors locker room. So I'm just going to start with there. Concerns about Butler's fit with the Warriors should be the least surprising thing anyone's heard, given whatever the fuck is going on with that posture showdown they got going there. But more comfort level with LaVine, and the real key quote here is key stakeholders. Who are the key stakeholders, Tommy? Key stakeholders with the Warriors. I love, like, everything with the Warriors sounds like a tech startup,
Yeah, VC brain, baby.
Here's the exact quote, just to be clear. And if such a deal is possible, the idea of LaVine joining their midst has prompted some intrigue among key stakeholders.
I mean, I think we generally know who those guys are, right? Got to be Joe. Got to be Kirk. Steve has to probably factor into that. Mike.
Steve's clearly a key stakeholder.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is Mike a key stakeholder?
Probably
ironic because he's the GM.
Probably not quite yet. But I do understand the concerns with Jimmy. Jimmy feels like he's just very mercurial, obviously, but it feels like the similar type of thing as a CP or like a DeMarcus Cousins, where it's like, yeah, he's a little bit of a hothead, But for whatever reason, like the concern would be like him and Draymond in the same locker room. And they mentioned it in this article, right? Like right
Sure.
down here. They seem to get along with Draymond just fine because Draymond respects their competitive nature, right? And that's kind of all Draymond wants out of the teammate for the most part is just be competitive as it can possibly be. But as I say that, I think I'm starting to lean towards LaVine a little bit more. I mean, I would have loved it during the summer, but he's younger, more team control. And, Draymond played with him in the 2021 Olympics. Kerr was an assistant on that team. So they know how this guy operates on a day-to-day basis. They know what kind of teammate he is. Draymond has said multiple times he was very impressed by Zach's ability to lock in defensively when it really mattered and in like high stakes moments. So, if you're asking me to pick one of the two, I really do think I'd go LaVine right now.
Ooh.
You see the
Interesting.
opposite
You
way?
don't think Steph is a key stakeholder.
Oh, well, of course he is. What do you mean? And we get also the shadow GM, Draymond Green. Whatever Dre says they do.
So I was going to say my read on this article is I think key stakeholders is a indirect way of referencing Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, or Draymond Green.
Okay.
Maybe all three, or maybe a partial part of them. Because I think if it was Joe and Kirk, it'd be worded as a front office thing. It'd be worded as the Warriors brass thinks he will fit more comfortably into the locker room. But key stakeholders is funny wording. I'm purely out there in conspiratorial land and just kind of like Detective Sam mode right now. So you guys can take it or leave it with me. But I'm reading this as it's either Steve, it's either Steph, or it's either Draymond. I don't think Pods or Lindy Waters are considered key stakeholders yet. So I don't think it's anyone else on the roster. I don't think it's the GM because that would just be the wording would be about the front office. So the other option is if there's a shadow figure in the front office, like an owner's friend, like our own version of Linda Rambis, but to my knowledge, that doesn't exist right now.
Of all the interesting things in Golden State front office that we've heard, I don't think we've heard of anything like that yet. Thank God we haven't.
Just one of the guys on the all-in pod is actually the shadow GM of the team, so it's possible.
It would just add to the chaos.
Would it surprise you? Would it surprise you if it's like secretly the all-in podcast is actually very influential in Joe Lacob's decision making in the front office?
It'd be like if remember that guy Ernie Adams that was like Bill Belichick's like whisperer,
Yes.
and like was essentially like pulling all the strings for Belichick. Like what if
About him.
What if the Warriors had their own Ernie Adams?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to stick with my theory. That aside,
it makes sense.
Who do you think Steph wants to play with more, LaVine or Butler?
LaVine. I mean, I don't think that's. I shouldn't say it's not a question. I think he would be accepting of either if the trade got done. But LaVine's younger, and I think part of the deal for Steph is I think the way he's potentially viewing it is he needs somebody a little bit younger. I think he really enjoyed playing next to Poole. I really do. Steph and Jordan obviously had a very good relationship. And we both heard that, Steph really just enjoyed having somebody else who could like create something off the dribble. And Jimmy can do that, but it's much different. It's much more of like kind of a grinded out style. And I think it would work just fine with the Warriors. But at the same time, LaVine kind of already fits their ethos offensively in a lot of ways. He might not move the ball exactly how Kerr wants all the time, but he's a guy who can come off screens. He can create shots on and off ball. He's not selfish. He'll take some tough shots, but you need a guy who's willing to take and make tough shots because they don't really have anybody who can do that right now.
I will also say LaVine has been underrated around the league for the last decade because just from a shot making perspective, like you can point out to the lethargic effort on defense most nights, and that's real. And
yeah,
the playmaking, he's not a point guard. I'll put it that way. Like it leaves some to be desired, but like at a certain point, when you put the ball in the hoop that efficiently for that long, I mean, he's shooting 45% from three this year. He's 40% on like 8 threes a game over the last 8 years. Just look around the league and tell me how many players can shoot at that level. Like, he's more efficient than Damian Lillard. He's more efficient than Devin Booker. He's more efficient than who's another well-known Paul George, like all these guys. And I'm not saying he's a better player than them, because there's more to basketball than just your shooting percentages, but it does matter. And it is impressive that year in, year out, he's like 50+% on twos, around 40% on threes, 86% on his free throws. Like, the ball goes in. Doesn't matter who's guarding him.
Yeah. I said something like this on the last pod. On a night-to-night basis now, he is every bit as talented offensively as Pete Klay Thompson, and offers a little bit more as a threat at the rim because he's just more athletic. You know what I mean? But that you're saying 8 threes a game at 40%, that is Pete Klay Thompson numbers, right? And obviously doesn't have the big game credibility, doesn't have the big game
Doesn't
resume
defend.
that
Doesn't defend like
overall,
like
not as
Pete
close,
Clay.
not close to Pete Clay. Absolutely not. But just purely offensively of what he can bring, it's that same level. And that's what we've been asking for ever since essentially Clay tore his Achilles, right? So you'd solve a lot of problems. The real question is what has to go out the door to get LaVine in the door.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just pulling his numbers up. Like, I just think it's important to pull his context. The last 5 years, he has averaged 7.3 threes a game, and he's made 39.8% of them. So there's that. 55% of his twos, 25 points per game. Like, that's not an insignificant sample size. That's 5 fucking seasons, He's basically fluctuating between 38% and 42% of his threes. He's gonna hit his mid-range shots at a highly efficient clip. He gets to the rim. Like, offensively, he's a machine.
Yep.
He doesn't get enough credit for being the machine he is offensively.
No, and part of that's the situation he's stuck in. He's been stuck in no man's land for 4 to 5 years now.
Sure.
And I would, in a vacuum, I'm taking Devin Booker over him, but I think below Booker in terms of two guards and lead, Booker and Edwards, is there a guy you'd take offensively over LaVine? I don't consider SGA a two. I consider
okay.
No. I consider him more of a one. He's their point guard for all intents and purposes, right? Like, he is running the one for them for the most part. So
fair.
Shea's a one. Booker and Edwards are both better offensive players than LaVine, especially when it matters, I think. But after that,
just all the all-around offense, like the playmaking, all the aspects of it. I agree with you. Like, I'm not gonna say it's better than Devin Booker.
But part of the fit with Golden State would be like he doesn't have to worry about the ball handling. You got Steph, you got Draymond to do a lot of the playmaking. Just go score, man. That's all we need you to do. Go score,
or just like realistically, like he can make a play. He's just like, he's okay at it. He's not great at it. He's not an elite playmaker, but like, he has average 4 to 5 assists. He can drive and kick. He can find a big on a roll. He can do, quite frankly, stuff that most of the Warrior perimeter players can't do.
Right.
So,
I mean, Pete Clay wasn't a great passer either. It worked for a long time with Pete Clay offensively.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's all right. So now we can get to the tough question about it. Are you willing to give up Wiggins for him or for Jimmy Butler?
Oh man. I mean, this has obviously been the question bounced around in my head for weeks now. And with the way Wiggins is playing, and not only the way Wiggins is playing, essentially what it does to the rest of your team, I think you're just like, it's lateral, right? Like, the thought would be you trade for LaVine and now you're thinking the next 2 to 3 years, right? You think you can replace Wiggins' defense in the aggregate, and you're looking 2025, 26, 2026, 27. That's how long Steph is under contract for. I mean, if it came down to it and they had to give up Wiggins, I probably say yes, because I'm so sick of watching disgusting offensive basketball, but I wouldn't be happy about it. And you would hope that some of the guys kind of more down the rotation can step up a little bit defensively. They're not going to be as good as Wiggins. And then you're going to have to pick up probably a guy or two as a free agent, because you're going to have to give up a couple more guys than you're bringing in.
That's
And that's where
I'm at.
Yeah. Right. And maybe you get Torrey Craig back in that deal too, and he can steal some minutes on the wing defensively. You go bargain bin hunting in free agency in, kind of right after the trade deadline, and you try to figure it out and piece it together. But I think I'd do it if I have to. And as tremendous as Wiggins has been this season, LaVine's just a better offensive player, and it's not even really close.
I think Wiggins is more replaceable. Not because I think you can find an exact replacement of him, but I look at the Clippers this offseason. The Clippers could have got Wiggins for Paul George leaving, and they decided not to. And a lot of that was cap reasons because they would have had to take Chris Paul. That would have put them in the tax. And, they were going to waive him. So, like, what's the point, right? But at least part of it was on their team with 3 guys ahead of him in the pecking order, if you consider Norm Powell. You got James Harden, you got Norm Powell, and obviously Kawhi Leonard ahead of him. He was going to be a 4th option whose primary responsibility was defense and whose secondary responsibility was to hit open shots when he got the ball kicked to him. Their thought was, we can replace that on a budget deal. And they got Derrick Jones. Derrick Jones is not as good as Wiggins, but defensively, he gets close enough. He really doesn't hit shots at the same rate, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they can replace enough of him in the aggregate that they were willing to get Derrick Jones for $7 million instead of Wiggins for 30. Yeah. Terrence Mann is another guy who, again, not as refined a defender as Wiggins, but he is a disruptive defensive player. Yep. And he does enough stuff that they were willing to go that route. And that's how I would view this. The things Zach LaVine does are fucking harder to find than what would happen to your team if you had him. If you had him and Steph Curry, now you have 50 points in your backcourt. And you're looking for I'm not saying you don't want Wiggins, because Wiggins is the perfect player to put next to them. Like, he really is the perfect player to put next to him. But if you're saying, do I want 70% of Wiggins if I can get a scorer next to Steph, or do I want 70% of a scorer if I can keep Wiggins? I'm going to lean the first one because the market just dictates. It's harder to find those guys. It's cruel. It's mean. I'm open to the idea of them trading for him and keeping Wiggins. That is my priority. That would be the way I'd like to do it. But if you're telling me it's one or the other, I mean, they showed with Melton this offseason, you can find an impactful, grimy, good defensive player who can fit a role for 10 to 12 million in the NBA. You cannot find that offensively. You just can't.
And like we said earlier, Wiggins is one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league, and that's why he gets paid $26 million a year. Zach gets paid $43. There's a reason that the league dictated it to essentially be this way. Zach is more valuable, and like you said, the Clippers brought in Derrick Jones Jr. They have Terrence Mann, and they also got Chris Dunn. And they feel like with, essentially those 3 guys, they can make up that defense that we would have gotten from Wiggins at $26 million. Right. And there's still some, I was perusing the free agent list today as all these rumors started swirling. Markelle Fultz is still out there. Obviously not as big as Wiggins, but athletic, can defend. Troy Brown's still out there. Like, there are names, and none of those guys will be as good as Wiggins. Not even close, especially just on the whole. But even defensively, they won't be as good as him. But the hope is, if you can score it a little bit better, you're playing more set defense anyway. You're not in transition as much. You can get a little bit more creative with your coverages, and you can just figure it out. And then you can go into the summer feeling better about where your team's at, and there's less tweaks to make.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this. If you have to include Wiggins, which, to be clear, there are ways to get LaVine without Wiggins, it's just very difficult. Yeah, it's a lot of.
You essentially have to give up all the veterans on your bench, more or less, every single one.
And someone has to want to take them. It's not just that you have to give it up. It's like, you're like, hey, Bulls, we got 6 players for you. I don't want 4 of these guys. Fuck out of here. Like, it's not that simple. If it was that simple, everyone would do it.
Uh-oh. Looks like we lost Sam here for a second, guys. So I think where we're going with this is.
Sorry about that.
And we back? I was about to take over for you. Go ahead.
Just go ahead. Go fully solo.
No, I mean, I think what you're saying is if you have to include Wiggins, who are the guys that you're putting alongside him in the trade?
No. Actually, what I was going to say, if
Okay.
you 100% have to include Wiggins, is it still LaVine over Jimmy? Like,
I
if you're
think so.
looking at it through the lens of, let me reframe my question. If you're looking at it through the lens of you're giving up Wiggins, who's clearly one of your three best players right now, and the other two pieces are probably expiring contracts, right? Which one of those two players is easier to like, all right, now I got my number two and I'm going to fill this roster out and we're going to be a contender?
It's LaVine to me. Younger, better scorer,
Okay.
more team control. I don't even think it's a question. Jimmy can walk this offseason. And that's why teams are not willing to give up a ton of picks for him because you don't have the control with Jimmy. And I think it would go well if the Warriors got him, but at the same time, that it is a risk. Absolutely. And part of the thing with trading for LaVine is, and we've seen this happen before in the NBA, the way that OKC, the opponent tonight, got SGA was because they traded for Paul George, right? They brought Paul George in. Kawhi goes to the Clippers, and then Kawhi wants to play with Paul George. And so back in that deal in the trade, OKC gets SGA. Essentially, it's LaVine isn't the same level of player as Paul George, but if you blow this thing up and you're going to trade LaVine eventually, maybe a good team does want him and you get back a nice young piece for him and you can build from there, right? But with Jimmy, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to do that. But with the control you have over LaVine, you can eventually trade him down the line and you can still get some stuff back and get some picks. You can get some young players.
I'm going to go the other way on you.
Oh, man.
I think,
I love it.
So here's Jimmy's clearly the better defensive player. He's also the better playmaker. He's also the worst scorer. As much as I love Jimmy and he's had his 40-point explosions in the playoffs, he's just not as skilled as Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine walks into 25 points against anyone. Like he's just a better scorer that way. I think it's going to be easier to fill your roster with Jimmy. I think you can put a two guard who is an okay defender but can space the floor next to Steph and Jimmy. You need a front court floor spacer. I think it's easier to build around that way. But then on the flip side, he's older. He's a
You're
fucking
old,
hothead.
man. Yeah,
Yeah,
old. And how much are you asking of Jimmy defensively at 35, 36, 37 years old? I think that's now if we're talking 31, 32-year-old Jimmy Butler against 29-year-old Zach LaVine, I think it's a very different conversation.
sure.
But I mean, he ain't getting any younger. And are you really going
Yeah.
to ask him to not only be maybe a primary ball handler in a lot of playoff matchups? You know
I
what I
think
mean?
he
Like
wants to be a primary ball handler, to be
right,
fair.
right. Like Steph's going to take a lot of that sometimes, but Steph is also happy to let Jimmy control the ball and play off ball for the most part. And you're going to ask him to be your stopper for 4 straight rounds. That just doesn't feel very realistic to me. You
Okay.
know? Yeah. And like I said, you lose. And what factors into it more is like losing that team control and not having any control going into the summer.
Well, at least we know he's rational. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to end it there. I'm going to say, actually, no, before we end it, I want your, do you think the Warriors will get Zach LaVine? We're a week away from the deadline. We're a week away.
Nothing in the past 3 years tells me they will get
Okay.
Zach LaVine, but fuck it. Let's say, yeah, they get Zach LaVine.
Oh, I'm going to be a hater. I'm going to say it's not happening. I think Looney, Wiggins, GP2 are going to ball out on Friday. I think they're going to say, we got Zach LaVine at home, baby. No trades. No.
This is the 14.
We'll see. I'm excited to see how it plays out. Tommy, appreciate you. Appreciate everyone who listened.
Thanks, everybody.